Hello, hello, hello. Happy, it is already Wednesday. Already Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, Sterling, thank you for putting in all the numbers related to the GDP. We had a second revision, or second estimate. This would be the first revision, the second estimate for Q3. Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Sterling. There it is in the stream of all the news, which can't get what's going on with GME. GameStop massive rally driven by fresh waves of speculative bets. Well, that's going to all again end well. Hey, good morning, Richard. So is this still the way the comments are working? Is it still working for everybody with the white on the blue? Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Jacob. So, good morning, Martinez. All right. So, if you weren't paying attention, and you should have been, we had the GDP growth rate revised higher, and this is a lot of government stimulus flowing in there and government spending. So this, and people are still calling for Fed to cut rates. Getting a spring next year, but we could get a resurgence of. If they were to do that, a resurgence of inflation. Now, because this is offsetting a lot of the private sector pullback and a lot of the consumers starting to pull back. So this could get very, very interesting. But what matters to us, price action rally continues on. Rally continues on. So that's what really matters, was what the price action is doing. You had core PCE prices coming in slightly better. Remember, this is based off the whole second quarter. We get the PCE prices again tomorrow. Remember that, and that's just for October. And those are the more recent ones. So, real consumer spending bouncing up from the last major reading from Q2, but still lower than forecast. So, consumer was pulling back lower than forecast. What else do we have today? EIA numbers, and then Fed Beige Book and Mester speaking. So that's where we sit now. Tomorrow, 7:30. Don't forget, we have the PCE numbers for October, which weigh a little more heavily than the PCE numbers for today. And we have jobless claims and personal income and personal spending. Personal spending and personal income and the PCE numbers are going to be the big thing at 7:30 Central tomorrow. So do not ignore those if you're a short-term trader. If you're a long-term trader, it can lead to some volatility, but you need to know where your stops are. So far, very bullish day across the board. Completely bullish day. If we look, let's refresh. What is going on here? Come on. Come on. There we go. There we go. Oh, boy, that's not right. There we go. Everything's up. Everything's up. Utility's only up 0.04%, but look at technology up close to 79 basis points, 67 basis points for consumer cyclical. So everything's in rally mode. Just go ahead and buy it. We'll see if that continues through the open. So again, rate cut. Let me refresh this again one more time since we did have the information coming out. Now this is still the first cut in May. First cut in May. So that's what the market's looking for, and still solidly in greed mode. Who else is here? Who else is here? Hey, good morning, Heinrich. Good morning, Royal Palms. So we had CrowdStrike, which was a beat. Yesterday, Workday, which was a beat. So you know what I didn't look at this morning? I got to look at it real quick. Did it come out yet? I was too busy looking at GDPs. Ooh, boy. Ooh, Dollar Tree. What was that? Looks like a miss. Oh, boy. The low-end retail consumer getting hammered. But that's not down much. So the upper end consumer still strong. All right, so we got the little pause, sideways pause, 8 pushing the price yesterday. Little whipsaw action based off the poor 7-year Treasury auctions, but You got a little volatility in there yesterday, but then the breakout, sustaining finally above this 45.75 level. This is this morning, sorry. This was yesterday. Now this morning you had the little whipsaw. Oh boy, this is going to be an interesting day. This morning, breaking out in the European session. Jumbling all my words. So about 45.75. Coming up 45.90, 4,600 is going to be a key magnet price. And then 46.34, remember, 46.01 is still a gap left behind for August. I would be shocked. What was the high today so far? 45.90.25. I would be shocked if this gap does not fill today. Would be absolutely shocked. The key support at the opens back at this 45.75, 45.74 area on any pullback. We got the rising 4-hour rotation zone. So that's what I'm watching. Nothing really changes in the short term unless we really start dropping below this 45, 46 area. Even if we got a bigger pullback, would not be major technical damage. And there is no fantastic, I mean, unless you're looking like at a 15-minute thing that could be a potential not quite double top, but there's no longer term bearish pattern just yet. And remember, any pullback, you see how we paused near the highs in mid-September. We paused here, moved sideways to get to cycle bottoms, as we talked about yesterday. We're now back in massively overbought conditions. Remember, just because you're overbought does not mean it has to stop. And daily cycles have reset by moving sideways. So still watching for another push above 46.01. The next key areas are 46.17, then 46.34, and then 46.45 to complete the 87.5 from the whole corrective move down. Good morning, Legion Reaver. Legion Reaver. Oh, I only got 2 hours of sleep last night. I'm sorry, everyone. Good morning, Anissa. 15% pre-market. Oh, okay. We're back in rah-rah mode. Yeah, gold is ripping. Remember, what we've had, I put out, how long has it now been? Has it already been, I know it's been a few weeks since it shifted to long-term bullish pattern. So nobody should get caught off guard. Now I'm expecting a pause here. We'll get to gold in a second. Yesterday, this played out nicely at the open. Once I can get my charts to reflect it. We had the little mini double, which we talked about. We got to all the targets, pulled back. Then we formed a really nice resistance shelf and then broke out in the European session today. So what do we look like longer term? Longer term, there's a couple key support areas. We're looking at about 16,113 to 16,100, and then more significant is 1650. Nothing really changes from a technical perspective, though, until you start breaking below about 15,950. Next target 16,303, and then the target after that would be 16,005 area. So the Dow, seeing if it's going to reconnect with the 87.5 again. The minor target was 35,550 area. The next major target is 35,800, with a minor target being 35,650, 660 area. Key pullback right now, let me raise this up. The key pullback area is 35,450. Russell, still trying to break out. We got the little spike up, hitting that 75 harmonic and pulling back. So it still needs to sustain something. If this does get a move on, remember, still the minor 87.5 here from this little pullback move and the 200. So 1828 is very, very major resistance. But you see in the Russell, got that little pop up with the GDP numbers coming out and then immediately sold. So it really has to start sustaining above 1813. The levels have not changed. VIX, Sell vol. Sell volatility, fueling the rally also. Vol funds selling volatility, buying everything. Now, that can keep continuing until it doesn't. It would take something to really shock the market at this point, but this is very interesting because if there is a shock, this could lead to some really, really butthurt traders and volatility funds getting hurt. But if nothing shocking happens, they can keep selling vol. I'm going to be watching 1430 area. The DAX. Little pause, pull back to the rotation zone. Breaking out higher. Remember, I pulled off the head and shoulders because it already hit that second major target and the third one was in here. So I'm just using the harmonics. The next key area is 16,339, then 16,525. Pullback area, we're going to bump this up a little now. Key pullback area 16,075 to 16,100. The notes, the futures, not the yield, the note futures continue to move up now against the upper end of the channel and a pretty nice resistance shelf up here from mid-September. So going to be watching more so back in overbought, watching more so for a minor topping pattern. This is very sloppy so far, but I will be keeping an eye on this to see, because it's that one candle that makes it not so nice, but that would be the only minor thing I'll be watching, and that doesn't even take it back to the daily rotation zone. If we look at the yield, again, closing a couple days ago below the 62.5 and just reconnecting with the 75. Harmonic. On a continued down move, 4.168 is the next level. This is a minor pause area, so we'll just see what else this gives us. That just reinforces 75. This gives us 4.2 to 4.168 as the major support area. But this is looking like it's trying to put in a potential short-term bottom. We so far have a flag pattern setting up. Going to be watching to see if this rolls down and forms a more supportive base down here. 10-2s. Still trying to steepen. Remember, we're still focused on zero long term. And remember, we did trigger the massive weekly double bottom, or monthly. It's really a monthly double bottom. But nothing has changed with this pullback. Still longer term next year, expecting the recession dollar index coming down to that 62.5 area, and then the strong reversal. So going to be watching, see if this can get some follow through, bounce back to 103, and then maybe turn back down but get a more substantial bottoming pattern. Remember, the potential double that never triggered is off the table. So going to be watching for a move to reconnect with the rotation zone, probably a rotation back down, and then we'll see if it can finally break and get the dollar rally moving again. But if we close below 102, going to be watching for more downside price action. So this is a really good area to trail at if you've been short the dollar from my perspective. Crude, the double is still not invalidated. This did not pull down to the 75% harmonic. Don't know if it'll trigger. Still watching. We have major overhead resistance right here. Trigger point is 78.46. So nothing else has changed with crude. Gold, as Sterling mentioned, gap up. Gapping above the 87.5. By the way, the double is clearly that never triggered off the table. Why do I point these out all the time? I get all these comments still, and I'm going to reiterate this to new people. Just because there's a potential setup, it doesn't mean it has to trigger. What I like to use these for as the potential setup is I know for longer term positions where a key stop level is. If I don't put it on the chart, I can't identify the key stop levels. But that does, just because there's a potential setup does not mean it ever has to trigger, both on the bullish and bearish side. Until then, you trade with the trend. The trend, we closed back up in October above the 62.5. So we got a pullback. but we were expecting a reconnect based off probabilities with the 87.5, and that has played out. Now, would not be surprised to see some kind of pause up here, but this is getting into quad top territory and long-term breakout areas watching for a breakout, but would not be surprised to at least see the, since this is the first test up here since May, maybe a little pause, a pullback, even a pullback to 2020 does not do significant technical damage just yet. Okay, but generally this might take a couple tries and then could blast through. How much more juice you see in URA? Picking up some pretty sizable weekly divergences. Well, since we are on commodities, and uranium is a commodity, we've hit some very significant levels. But we're getting some divergences. We've come off. We've had some divergences up here. But let's take a look. What do we have? What do we have? On the daily, you do have a minor. Let's just double check this. Let's just double check it. You have a minor double top. Now that would pull it potentially back. Now that's a lower probability since it's against the rotation zone. We look at the weekly though. The weekly is coming up to a significant area with weekly cycles at the top. So depending on your time frame, it's time frame based. If you're trading a little things on the daily or the shorter term time frame, I know where shorter term stops are. From the weekly time frame, this is, you know what, even a pullback to 25 does not destroy the narrative. Okay? So this is why I like to trade these things around core positions. Taking some off, lightening up around here, especially if the daily triggers, and then waiting for that pullback and then looking to re-add. Especially when the cycles get to bottom. Right now it's bottom top. Top on the weekly, daily on the bottom. And hitting, you see a key harmonics. Now this double does not have to trigger. That's why I wouldn't just take all off. That's why I'd be especially trailing with a lot of the core position. Because this is still basing above this key resistance area. This double might never trigger, and it's still a minor pullback. So don't try to guess what the market's going to do. So far, this is in a bullish pattern, but it is in areas that it's topped out significantly back in 21 and in 22. But we had a pullback in September that pulled back to the weekly rotation zone and rotated back up. And we should still at least reconnect with this 87.5 area, if not break out higher at some point next year. Okay? That's why trailing is so important. Oops, I'll fix that later. All right. Hey, Christoph. How you doing, Christoph? The Magnificent Five just keeps trucking on. I guess we should get off the chart. Now this is starting to look like this might never trigger either, but it's getting to a sloppy daily head and shoulders. I'm going to keep an eye if the Magnificent Five breaks down below about 1320 on an equal weighted basis. The yen finally completed. Reacted at the second target, bounced up, finally completed at the final target. Where did this take us on the weekly basis? Back to the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. So now I'm watching for a more significant bottoming pattern to form. All right, we'll see how that plays out. Don't need to dwell a lot on that today. The potential double is off in the euro. This is interesting because the euro did close above the 62.5. So let's see if this can keep marching. The next area I would focus on is this 110.50 to 110.60. I would not focus all the way yet on the 87.5. But key support coming in right now at 109.40. Nothing much to talk about in the pound. It hit the 62.5 and pulled back. It still needs to close above 127.27 to continue the march higher from a probability standpoint. The spiders gapping up today. 456.38 is the first level of key support, and then the major support would come in at 454.93. And then we'd be looking if some disaster hit right around 452.50. Next minor target, we still have a gap left behind, 457.79. So on any bullish play into the open, 457.79, and then your major resistance area, 458.80 to 459.25. We break above that, 462.13. The Qs, 393.68. Above that, the next major target, 399.39. Let's just see where the minor harmonics takes us. 395.45 and the more significant harmonics. Look, we got a cluster right here, 399.39. So could we break out and hit that over the next week? Yeah, especially with cycles at the bottom, we could, unless there's some disaster. So definitely still being on cautious side just because weekly cycles are at the top, but they could stay at the top for a while. So it's trailing on short-term positions more aggressively, and longer-term positions, it would have to start dipping below into the rotation zone on the daily before I get at all concerned. Tesla, remember Cybertruck day tomorrow. Next key resistance is 257.31, especially on a closing basis. It broke out yesterday to the upside. All right, still the invalidation point stop area for this previously triggered big weekly double top is 264.17. NVIDIA, still nothing, watching for a rotation and then a more significant topping pattern coming up. GM has a potential daily double bottom that's gapping up above the first target. And that's where would not be chasing it, would be waiting for some kind of pullback if you were going to play this. Because if it gaps above the first target, I do not like to chase this also, since this is a very key resistance point you see on the chart. But that's where it sits. And on a weekly, it's still against the weekly rotation zone. So watch where it closes this week, especially on Friday, to see if it closes above the weekly rotation zone, because it could still get a pullback. But I'd be watching for shorter term pullback areas if you were going to play this. Again, can't give trade recommendations. That's just how I analyze it. What else do we have in here? What else? Well, you said games. I just got to look at it. Wow. Holy smokes. I didn't even look at GameStop yesterday. Let's just see how that's... Oof. Above all the double targets. Wow. Into the rotation zone. Against the major 1650. There we go. The GameStop lunatics are back. Fantastic. Is this market getting frothy or what? All right. I think that's about it for today. Let's just peek back at the shorter term little S&P. I'll be watching in case something does come into the open. It'd have to get above 458.80, 458.850. Then I'd be watching this key low, 458.275. Other than that, going to be seeing if we get some strong tick into the open. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Yesterday's tick, was back and forth. We did not have any major sustainable key things. We had the little break here, but then pulling back. So I'm really seeing to see if we get, for a continued breakout bullish move, sustained spikes above 800. With that, I shall talk to everyone tomorrow. Check out soon to be. Hey, is AMC? What's going on with AMC? Soon to be bankrupt. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Oh. Oh, it's popping. It's popping. Are the apes back in town? Let's buy this. I mean, come on, people. Come on. It's their money, not my money. All right, we shall see. They're starting to get squeezy today. All right, know your trading plan. Know where your stops are. Right now, the trend is still up very strong, so keep that in mind. And there's no overly bearish setups just yet. So with that, I shall talk to everyone tomorrow. Bye for now.